Now, the next person I would like to introduce has flown over specially from the United States of America to be here today. Terry Sanderson and I met Matthew LaClair at the International Humanist Congress in Washington, D.C. last year. He's an extraordinary young man, and we found his story an inspirational one. And I'm going to ask him to come up to the stage and tell you a little bit about his story. Matthew. Matthew reported his form teacher to the principal of his school for teaching creationism in his school in New Jersey. Disappointingly, he received little support from his classmates as the teacher was popular. Just one of the other teachers supported him, but only privately, and that was not even a science teacher. Isn't that dreadful? And Matt's story has made the New York Times 7 times. Matt.
Hello everybody. I was thinking of starting off with thanking a lot of people. The only thing I'm frightened of is there's so many people here to thank, so I think I'm going to give a general thank you to all of those who are doing so much for secularism, so thank you all for being here. Basically, I'm going to try and tell my story as briefly as possible, as I don't have much time. I grew up in a town that is 10 miles away from downtown New York City. And New York City is, as many people know, it's considered liberal, and there are a lot of people who are willing to listen to other views on different issues. When I walked into my US history class, when I was in my 3rd year of high school, our teacher told the students things such as, if you reject Jesus' gift of salvation, you belong in hell. He told students that evolutionary theory was false and unscientific. He told students the Big Bang Theory was completely false and unscientific. He said that dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark. Now this occurred starting from the first day of school. And I was thinking I should challenge him. For understandable reasons, I'm sure. So on the 3rd day of classes, I decided I should get proof. Because really, is an administration going to believe a 16-year-old kid or a 14-year veteran in the teaching system? So I recorded some of these classes, and when I brought it to the attention of the school, they did not seem to care. So we set up a meeting where I was sitting right next to my teacher, and across on the other side behind his desk was our principal. During the course of this meeting, I asked the teacher if he made these comments. He denied making almost every single comment that he made in class. In addition to that, he said how he had 4 kids, one has a kidney disease. If I lose my job and my kid possibly dies, it's basically your fault. And this occurred for about the course of an hour. Finally, at the end of the meeting, I told him I recorded the classes. The meeting changed a little bit at the time. Essentially what had happened was they said, okay, maybe we should stop this meeting right here. And I had assumed at this point we would hear from somebody to deal with this situation. All we asked for were corrections of the inaccurate statements that he made, particularly about the sciences and evolution, considering this was a US history class, and for us to come up with a way to make sure this kind of thing does not happen again. And we were ignored for over a month. By the principal, by our superintendent of schools, by our board of education, by everyone. And so finally we told them that if we did not take care of the situation now, if we do not receive at least a phone call from anyone in the administration, we would have to go public. Finally, we got in touch with the board attorney, and he told my father that he has no right to know what's going on inside of the public school classrooms. The story came out the next day. And of course it got to the New York Times and BBC Radio and went to a lot of places. But the reaction from my town is what surprised me most. I lost a lot of friends. Students who I talked to after some of these class sessions were saying, he really shouldn't be condemning students to hell during class. And I agreed with that. But I'd see these students on the news being interviewed, friends that I've had, some since kindergarten, some since first grade, saying the teacher never did anything wrong. In fact, many students even denied that he made some of those comments while the recordings were out there on the internet and on the news for people to hear. So finally, in January of that year, my teacher decided he would come out publicly. He said that he did not deny making any comments in that meeting in the principal's office. So I went to the next board meeting, and I had to tell them something else. I recorded that meeting too. I did not plan on releasing that information, but essentially my teacher had called me a liar to my town, so I felt I had to. But unfortunately, it was consistent barrage of harassment, of problems with many students, teachers. I even got a death threat from a student, but he put it up on a networking site online so everybody could see it, and I found out his name, and just a bad move. But eventually I was able to get speakers to come to the school as part of an agreement with the school administration that would speak on the issues of evolution, science, the separation of church and state that we have in the States, and things such as that. But unfortunately, this teacher is still there. And a few students who spoke to me that had him the following year told me he went back to doing the exact same thing. But they're all scared to challenge it. So that's the basic points of what had happened in my town. And I wish I could have done more, but unfortunately there was only so much I can do. So there are a few things that I want to give some advice on when challenging a situation like this. The first most important thing is knowing the law, knowing where you are. And I understand that it's completely different here in the UK as it is in the States. But in New Jersey, for example, I was allowed to record the classes. It's called one-party consent state. And so that's very important. Another thing is picking your battles, deciding what is appropriate to challenge, what's not appropriate to challenge. Thinking ahead is extraordinarily important, and that's luckily what I had to do, because without those recordings, the situation never would have been challenged. And the last thing I'd like to say is that when you're dealing with these situations, or even when you're having a conversation with someone who has a different viewpoint, and they're yelling, screaming, kicking, saying all kinds of things that are in a manner that are just simply inappropriate, my advice is to treat them not as outcomes. That there are only two outcomes that will come from that. One, they're going to continue to do that and look completely foolish, and you win the argument. Number two, and this has happened in my experience, they might learn something. And if they learn something, you've won also. So that's my general advice, and thank you for letting me be here.